Good morning. I'm Rabbi Feinstein. This is Valley Beth Shalom, and I'm privileged to join you this morning for a few minutes of coffee and Kavanah. I hope that you're having a very good morning and enjoying the beautiful springtime weather. This morning, we are looking out the window and thinking about the long term of what this is going to mean. And I want to share with you a thought from a great American rabbi. Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik came to America from Lithuania, uh, a great Talmud scholar, perhaps the greatest scholar of traditional Judaism of Talmud in the world. He taught for some years, founded the Maimonides School in Boston, and then became the leading rabbi of the Isaac Elchanan Rabbinical Seminary, excuse me, at Yeshiva University. Rav Soloveitchik, he's known in the Orthodox world as the Rav, just the rabbi. That's how great his stature is in the Orthodox world. In 1965, Rabbi Soloveitchik published an astonishing article. It's called The Lonely Man of Faith. It was an entire, it's a very long article. It was an entire edition of the traditional journal, the journal Tradition is what the name of the journal is. And Rav Soloveitchik begins this remarkable piece with a confession. He says, I am lonely. Now, what's remarkable about that is that no great rabbi ever spoke in the first person singular. No great rabbi ever confessed his inner life. Rabbis are supposed to speak about halakha, about Torah. Rabbis are supposed to speak about the conduct of a traditional life. Rabbis are supposed to offer theology to understand how God and the world works. And that's what traditional rabbis traditionally do. But here is a rabbi who begins with an astonishing sentence. I am lonely. Rabbi who confesses a personal experience, and the personal experience is an experience of being unsettled, of being at uneasy, at being somehow disturbed by his experience in the world. This very long article, and it's written in very, very dense philosophical prose. If you'd like to read it, you're welcome to read it. You can find it online. Just Google Soloveitchik, Soloveitchik, Lonely Man of Faith, and you can find a PDF of the article online. It can be bought purchased as a book. David Brooks, the New York Times columnist, quoted it at length in one of his book on character. And if you look up Brooks, you can see that there's a wonderful summary of the article there. Soloveitchik says, the loneliness that I suffer is not being alone. I have a very dense and warm and loving community around me always. But there's a different kind of loneliness. He speaks about a kind of, well, he calls it existential loneliness. It's just a fancy word of saying that there's something built into the human condition, built into being a human being, which leaves us with a sense of unease, of loneliness. And what's built in is on the one hand, the painful truth of our mortality, that not one of us lives an infinite number of days, and the painful truth of our separation from others, that no matter how dense our community, no matter how close our intimacy, no matter how much we're loved, that no one really knows the inner life of anyone else. Excuse me. That sense of loneliness has been spoken about by many philosophers and poets and writers of the 20th century. It's part of the whole ethos of the movement of the part of the whole ethos of existentialism, from Dostoevsky and Kierkegaard on into Sartre and Heidegger and even Buber. This idea that we are lonely. And so Soloveitchik goes on to describe this loneliness in a remarkable drush. He does a midrash. He says, if you open the book of Genesis, you find that there's two stories of the creation of the human being. Now, modern scholars have said that comes from two different sources. The Soloveitchik says that may or may not be true, but that's irrelevant. We have it in the Bible. And what the two stories are trying to show us, what they're trying to tell us, is that there's two different aspects to being human, and each of us embodies both of them. He calls the first Adam 1, which comes from the first chapter of Genesis, and the second Adam 2, which comes from the second chapter of Genesis. In the first chapter of Genesis, man is put into the world and given the mandate to be a creator, just like God. And so Adam 1 is what he calls majestic man. It's the human being that enters the world with a profound curiosity about how things work. Adam 1 creates mental models of the way the world works and manipulates those models in order to gain control of the world. Adam 1 is scientific man, technological man. And what Soloveitchik is telling us in this, which I think is a profound idea, is that science is not against religion. Science is itself a expression of what God put into each one of us. The legacy that God has given each one of us to meet the world and to master the world and to create a livable world and to fulfill our responsibilities to each other by having the power to protect the ones that we love. When I was a little kid, I was 6 years old when mom schlepped us to the schoolyard. And I remember this very vividly. We all lined up. Every kid in the school was lined up with his mom and dad around the schoolyard. And we got to the front of the line. There was the school nurse, and she gave me a little paper cup with a sugar cube coated with some orange goo. And my mother said, "Put it in your mouth. Suck it down. It's candy." And I tasted it. I don't remember what it tasted like. It was sugar. And I said, "What was that?" And I saw there were tears in my mother's eyes. She said, that means you're never going to get polio. And I remember my mother used to speak about polio when she was a kid. And even when I was a kid, there were times of the year we weren't allowed to go swimming. We would go on a camping trip, and we weren't allowed to go swimming in the stream or the lake because of polio. This polio was this terrible affliction that destroyed your control of your body. And the president of the United States, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when my mom was a kid, Franklin Roosevelt had polio. Well, all of a sudden, with one sugar cube, polio disappears. That's majestic man, using his powers of science in order to control nature and fulfill his responsibilities to protect the people that he loves. And then Soloveitchik says, but that's not all we are. We're not simply technological creatures. We're also existential creatures. And that comes in chapter 2 of Genesis. And in Genesis chapter 2, man is created in a very different way, from the dust of the earth. And what does that mean, says Soloveitchik? Soloveitchik says that means that we are aware of our immortality, of our mortality. We are aware of our limitations. We are aware that we are finite. We are aware that we are vulnerable. We are aware that not one of us has an infinite number of tomorrows or some license of invulnerability to walk the world. And Adam, too, reflects upon that and reflects upon his loneliness in the world and goes out to seek a partner, not a work partner the way Adam 1 would want, not a pragmatic partner who achieves things for us, but rather an intimate partner who knows me and hears my longing and my sadness and understands who I am and shares my joy and celebrates with me. And as part of that, Adam too encounters God as he seeks to understand, why am I in the world? What is the purpose of my existence? What is the meaning of my being? This is the Adam 2 way of approaching the world. And so Soloveitchik's article concludes that there's basically three reasons that we are lonely, that he is lonely in the world. The first is because these two aspects of us, Adam 1 and Adam 2, they oscillate, they alternate back and forth. And as soon as Adam 2 is ready to achieve a victory by discovering his redemption, by discovering redemption in the intimacy with another, the world of Adam 1, the practical world, calls us back. The practical world schleps us back into all the tasks of taking care of things. And the second is that Adam 2 is destined never to achieve full redemption. No one will ever really know us. And of course, what he's talking there is that each of us faces our mortality alone. Um, and we face the idea that we don't have infinite tomorrows, and we suffer that no matter how many times you confess that to somebody. It's still a lonely state. And the third, of course, is that he lives in a time and a place which favors and privileges Adam 1, but has no truck for Adam 2. That is, if you're the kind of person who gets things done in the world, you're rewarded royally, richly. But if you're a person who spends a lot of time wondering about why we are and what we are and what's the meaning of our business, of our lives and the business we carry on in the world, well, this culture doesn't have a lot of patience for you. It tells you to shut up and get back to work. I've been thinking about this a lot because what he does in this wonderful drasha of Adam 1 and Adam 2 is give us a model for understanding our experience. Let's take COVID, this terrible virus that has so disrupted our lives these last months. Adam 1, imagine for a moment that we didn't know that this was a virus. Imagine what happened in previous generations when the plague came, when the flu viruses came, and we didn't have the technology that described this. Suddenly, people randomly are getting sick. Suddenly, people are dying or they're getting better. The suffering is terrible. And we don't have any way to describe why. What science has given us, they haven't given us a cure yet, and it hasn't given us a vaccine, but it gives us an understanding, a mental picture of what we're dealing with. And because we know this is a virus, because we know what a virus is, or at least we think we know what a virus is, and because we can chart how this virus behaves, not only can we come up with preventions, wear a mask, social distancing, contact tracing, and eventually a vaccine, but at least we can see we have some control over it. If you can name something, if you can understand how it works, you gain a bit of control over it. That's why if somebody goes to the doctor and they have terrible pain, and the doctor says you have such and such, there's a momentary sense of relief. At least I know what it is. At least it has a name. The scariest thing is to go to the doctor with a terrible pain, and the doctor says, gee, I can't figure out why you have that pain. That's frightening. Imagine what it was like in earlier ages when people would get sick and we had no idea why. Was it God's will? Was it demons that inhabited the person? Was it curses? What was it? At least we have a mental picture of what this is. And that is the great triumph of Adam 1. And the triumph of Adam 1, of course, the victory will be when a vaccine is created or a treatment is arrived at, and this disease will cease to be such a terrible, terrible threat. And we have a certain sense of confidence that it's coming. It may not come till the fall. It may not come till the spring, till the winter. There may be a second wave of the virus, but at least we understand what it is that we're dealing with. That's Adam 1. But now let's switch for a moment and ask Adam 2. How does existential man, woman, how do we encounter this moment in our existence? Or put it this way, what have we learned about life from this experience? I mean, one of the things we've certainly learned is that our social isolation has made it acutely clear to all of us how much we need each other. We're lonely. That is, we need friends, we need family about us. We need to be with other people. I think many of us miss just going to social places. You go to a restaurant and you're sitting with the other person that you've come with, or even by yourself, and there's something about being in a place where people are. I've often stepped into Starbucks to pick up a coffee and noticed how many people sit at tables by themselves, pounding on their computers or reading a book or just sitting looking into the world. And I wonder, it'd be easier to do that if you're at home or your office, but I think people want to be with people. We are gregarious species. We want to be with others in the herd, in the flock, in the populace, in the community. We want to hear their voices. We want to see children and older people and men and women and friends and strangers. We just want to be with people, and we want to be around people. And this virus has made it so very difficult to be around people. And the idea that you have to wear a mask, which means that I can't identify you. I can't see you. I can't see who you are. I can't see how you respond. If I speak to you, I don't know if you're smiling or frowning. I can read your eyes, but only barely. Adam 2 approaches the COVID virus and says, this has only made it harder for me to find a way out of the trap of my subjectivity, to reach out to another and engage in an I thou relationship. Adam 2 would also notice that because this virus has removed so many of the distractions, because there aren't restaurants to go to every night and there aren't movies to watch every night. And I don't know about you, but I'm getting a little tired, a little weary of Netflix. And my wife sat down and watched all of Downton Abbey and she loved it. And I watched a few episodes and it's wonderful. But after a while, it's like, turn off the TV. And while there are lots of distractions on on Facebook, you got to turn it off after a while. The distractions go away and then we're left with ourselves. And we're left with ourselves to ask some very difficult questions like, who am I and what have I accomplished and what am I doing in the world? And all of those wonderful questions we asked when we were adolescents, 17, 18, 19 years old, and they're sort of coming back. It's amazing how many people are writing poetry now and sent me poetry or autobiographies or confessions. I think it's interesting that people have taken up baking. Baking is a very primal human gesture, right? If I want to know that my life matters, it's so hard to grasp that and some abstraction. So I'm going to make a nice loaf of sourdough. At least I can feed someone and I can offer something fragrant and nourishing and substantial into the world. We can look at this as any experience from the Adam 1 perspective of mastering and controlling, or we can look at this from the Adam 2 perspective. What would I like to learn about my life from this remarkable experience of COVID? And that's what Soloveitchik would have us do. At the end of the article, the end of the piece, Rav Soloveitchik says, I don't see any immediate solution, but somehow confession is good for the soul. So I hope that we have a chance, each of us, to share with each other, if not in person, online, and someday, God willing, in person, all the things that this experience has taught us. I hope it's made us deeper and wiser and more connected to the things that really matter in life. I want to wish you my blessings this morning and hope that you're taking very good care of yourself. This is Rabbi Ed Feinstein at Valley Beth Shalom, live and online for coffee and Kavanah. Just a quick announcement, this afternoon at 12:30, I'll be doing Lunch and Learn right here on Facebook again. We're studying the biblical prophets today, the trial of the prophet Jeremiah, and everyone is invited to join us for that. This evening at 7 o'clock, I'll be doing my In the Rabbi study. Been inviting a group of the most wonderful African-American pastors who work here in Los Angeles to help us have a conversation about, after the demonstrations, what comes next. Can American change? And how do we deal with the racism that stains our American democracy? How can we understand each other's lives and reach out and care for each other better? So join me tonight for that. And of course, all week. The announcement has gone out that Valley Beth Shalom will be opening soon. Our first in-person Friday night service will be on June 26th. That's a week from Friday night. You'll see the registration form on the VBS website. You need to pre-register and sign the consent document that you've read the protocols and agreed to take very good care of yourself and the people around you. And then I hope you'll join us at Shul. It'll certainly be good to see you. Even if you're behind a mask, it'll be good to see you again. I wish you a very good Wednesday. Take very good care.